Hi, my name is Jessica McCreary, and thank you for joining us today for our 7th Student Experience Panel, sponsored by the San Diego County Office of Education Equity Department. If you have joined us before in our previous student experience panels, you know how valuable it is to pause and listen to what our students have to share with us about their experiences in our schools. We are deeply appreciative for the courage of our students who are here today to share their stories as students with learning differences. I'd like to open the space today, as we have in the past, by reminding us of the valuable listening stances that encourage us to listen with empathy and compassion to our students' stories. The first listening stance is offered by the National Equity Project, which is "My experience is not up for debate." And the second is by the Indigenous scholar Leslie Marmon-Silko, who reminds us that my story is not for your entertainment, but it can be for our learning. The conversation you will witness today is being offered as an opportunity to learn and a call to action. I'd like to start off with an introduction to some basic concepts that pertain to the conversation you're about to hear. Today, our panel will consist of students with mixed identities, but what they all share in common is that they are all students with learning differences. Make sure I can change slides here. This is a statement that today's student panel has jointly made and would like us to share with you. Our disability should be seen through a positive light. We have learning differences that can be viewed in a positive way because we each have something unique to offer. I start with this statement because what follows will be information that highlights the importance and urgency of addressing the needs of this student group in our schools. But while we do so, we don't want to misrepresent the gifts that our students with learning differences have. As Micah Polak reminds us in her book, School Talk, the language we use to talk about our students matters greatly and can lay a foundation for equity in our schools if it conveys belief in all young, sorry, I have a kitty cat that's crying for my attention right now. The language we use to talk about our students matters greatly and can lay a foundation for equity in our schools if it conveys belief in all young people's equal human value and potential, and care and respect for their development and well-being. The data points we will share in subsequent slides were derived from 2 key California reports cited at the end, which are intended to provide guidance to our schools. And yet I would say the language used is not only limiting at times, such as the term disability, but also unintentionally avoids placing ownership of the results on how our school systems were designed, and instead places blame on the identified disabilities. Takes a little while to trickle in, I guess. Yeah, I don't know what just happened. Hang on a second, let me go back. So nearly 775,000 students with identified disabilities from birth through age 21 are enrolled in California public schools. So that means about 1 in 8 California students receive special education services. Sorry. The California and federal governments identify 14 disability categories by which a student can potentially qualify for special education services. During the 2017-18 school year, the disabilities of 86% of all California public school students identified for special education services fell into 4 of these categories. 38% were for specific learning disability, 21% were for speech or language impairment, 14% were for autism, and 13% were for other health impairment. Over the 10 school years between 07-08 and 17-18, the number of students identified for special education services has increased by 96,761 students. During the same period, both the number and percentage of students identified with autism and other health impairments have more than doubled, while the identification of students with a specific learning disability and speech or language impairment has dropped. The number of students with relatively severe disabilities has increased notably. As this figure shows, the prevalence of students with relatively severe disabilities has almost doubled since 2000 and 2001. This increase is due largely to a notable rise in autism, which affected about 1 in 600 students in 1997-98 compared to about 1 in 50 students in 2017-18. As stated in the report from the Legislative Analyst's Office, about 1 in 5 districts have especially poor outcomes for their students with disabilities. Students with disabilities score lower on reading and math tests than other students. As this figure shows, students with disabilities' average test score on state reading and math assessments was at the 18th percentile of all test takers in 2017-18. This percentile ranking is notably below that of other student groups, including low-income students who score at the 35th percentile and English learners who scored at the 23rd percentile. Disproportionality and students with disabilities inequity remains a challenge for students with disabilities and their families. There is a clear imbalance in various areas, such as the rates that students from any racial or ethnic group are identified as having a disability. Here you can see that there is a disproportionality. Here you can see there is a disproportionately higher rate of Black and low-income students who are being identified with a disability. Another disproportionality inequity is that the suspension rate of students with disabilities is almost double the statewide average. Students with disabilities also have relatively high rates of chronic absenteeism, with almost 1 in 5 students with disabilities missing 10% or more of the school year. Another inequity is that students with disabilities have relatively low graduation rates. Of the students with disabilities exiting high school in the 2017-18 school year, only 76% left with a high school diploma. 13.6% dropped out, 3.4% aged out, reaching the age of 22, which means they're after 21, they're no longer eligible for services. And 7% received a certificate of completion, which is a result of when a special education team determines that a student is unlikely to meet all requirements for high school graduation, and they elect to have the student seek a certificate of completion instead of a high school diploma. The data provided here was derived from these 2 reports from the Legislative Analyst's Office of California and the California School Boards Association. Our panelists come from different schools throughout San Diego County. The following questions are what we are asking them to respond to today, and we appreciate their willingness to share their personal insights about our school systems. I'd like to introduce my colleague, Anthony Seca, who is also hosting here the panel today.
All right, thank you, Jessica. And it's really a pleasure to be with our students here. And, you know, we're grateful, so grateful to them for volunteering to help educate people about their experience, about what works for them, but also some of their challenges and what maybe even some of their recommendations. So I've had the privilege to be on all of our student panels this year, and this one has really educated me greatly. We're really very honored to have Ian Andrews. He's a university student here in San Diego, and he also, you know, experienced the whole thing about having a learning difference and having an IEP. So he will be answering the questions as well as moderating for us. So Ian, will you go ahead and take it, please?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Once again, thanks to everybody who came out today. We really appreciate it. I'm Ian, like was previously mentioned. I'll be the MC today. So I just finished up my last quarter for the year at UC San Diego. I'm a physics major up there. My disability is autism spectrum disorder. So I'll usually be talking about that today. So yeah, thanks again for everybody for coming out today. One thing we'd like to do, maybe a land acknowledgement. I know it doesn't get acknowledged often very much. We are on Native American land, so I think it's noteworthy. We've got several tribes in the area and such, so I think it's important we take that time to just acknowledge that. Okay, so for the first question, oh, sorry, one more thing. I would like to honor all of the educators who came here today, as well as the educators who have helped me in my high school journey as well. I know that there have been several important staff members to me throughout my high school journey and even kind of into college. So I'd just like to thank all those people. Okay, so can Abby go ahead? Abby, who are you dedicating this session today?
I'm
Two.
dedicating it to my mom, boyfriend, and grandma for always being there for me and being on my side through my roughest days.
Thanks for sharing, Abby. Avery.
I am dedicating this meeting to the people that are taking time to listen to us and learn from us and improve the way they teach us. So thank you for listening to us.
All right, thank you, Avery. Madeline.
I'm dedicating this to all the people with disabilities who feel alone.
All right, thank you, Madeline. Sam.
I'm dedicating this to my parents that helped me through this, all through this from the start of being born through today.
Yeah, for sure. Parents can be great advocates. So thanks, Sam. All right, so getting into it, to the meat today. What are your experiences that or assumptions people make about you as a student with disabilities? And I think that for me personally, I usually don't let many people know because I know I've talked about it previously, but kind of afraid of people judging me, or once they find out, they're going to treat me differently. And I think one of the big things we're going to hit on today is people want to have that support network, but at the same time, they don't want to be treated any differently. And I think that will be a recurring theme today throughout our session. So, Sam.
I feel the same for you, that I don't never want to let people assume me. I mean, I do my best to act normal, but if people would want to know if I had some sort of condition, I actually would definitely tell them instead of have them assuming of what I am. So.
Thanks, Sam. Yeah, I think another thing that will be hit on quite a bit today is the assumptions. Assumptions are a big thing, and a lot of times they are negative. So I think one big thing is to just kind of open your ears and listen to people and try to avoid those negative assumptions. Madeline?
So some assumption, like sometimes people assume that a person with a disability may have a wider range of things that they have a hard time with than just their one struggle. And I think it's really important to have educators learn about specific disabilities. And even though each person with that disability is going to be different, it would be great, especially about the person in their class, learn about their disability so they can not make those assumptions that maybe they can't do this well, even though they have a disability, that they have this one struggle and maybe they have strengths in other areas.
For sure, yeah. Thank you, Madeline. Avery?
One assumption that I've always had to fight and prove wrong is that I'm not intelligent, so to speak, when learning in my education, or I'm not independent because I require some assistance. They just think that I'm not able to do things for myself, and for 17 years I've been trying to prove that wrong, and I hope that I have succeeded.
Thank you, Avery. Yeah, one thing, shoot, I lost my train of thought. I'll come back to that idea. Avery, any thoughts?
So yeah, you just had Avery, so go ahead and.
Oh, I did. I'm sorry, Sam.
You called me already.
I did. Did I mess up my order? I'm sorry. Who hasn't been called? My bad.
That would be me.
Abby. Okay. I'm sorry about that.
So it's okay. So some assumptions that have been made about me particularly is that I'm violent and I can't control my feelings, or because I have ADHD and ODD as well as bipolar, I can't focus for that long, which means it's harder for me to keep a job or stay on task in class or even at home. But for the past 15 years, I think 14, 15, I have been fighting to prove people that I'm not violent like they think, that I'm caring as well as the next person, and I can actually control my feelings better than a lot of other people can with bipolar. So those are some assumptions that I've been fighting and have been told.
Thank you, Abby. One thing I remember what I wanted to talk about is I know Avery hit on the point is that there are some people out there, unfortunately, who kind of, assume someone's intelligence by the way they talk or act. And one thing I wanted to hit on is, we talked about assumptions earlier, and I don't think anybody should assume that. But I think the other thing too is that kids are fairly aware of when that is happening. I know I was when I told people, and people are aware of those assumptions, and people are just especially students with learning differences are aware of how they're being treated and accommodated and stuff. So thank you everybody who shared. Sorry about the mix up earlier.
Can I just say one more thing?
Yeah, go
Just
ahead.
like what you guys were saying about like assuming intelligence, I think some people who assume our intelligence is just scared to admit and believe that we are smarter than we seem, and that we can be smarter than we are as smart as the next person. So
For sure. Thank you, Abby. One more thing for the next question is, what challenges have you experienced at school as a student with a disability? And, kind of tying that, I know it's kind of crossing over into the assumptions people make. But I think that one thing that I struggled with in a challenge I faced in high school, particularly back when I was in high school, was I had an IEP in high school. I know that was mentioned before. And I found that getting the accommodations was a little tough for me. Felt a little awkward to discuss my disability, especially in a more public setting, like after class when people are just kind of getting up out of their chairs and moving. I was kind of worried maybe somebody was going to overhear what I was talking about. So I think that teachers being able to set up a safe space or just like a special meeting time to accommodate people who might want to talk about things in a discreet manner, like a disability, would be really important and really helpful and beneficial to those who need that time or feel that they need that for that privacy. Sam?
I think mostly the things that really challenged me was academics, because sometimes I also I kind of have a hard time focusing whenever I was in my elementary school and sometimes my middle school. But like other than that, that's really it of the of like the really big challenges that I face. Yeah. So academically, I just I just didn't really understand of the concepts of each subject until I got to high school.
Thank you for sharing, Sam. Abby?
So a couple of things I have experienced and struggled with is missing part of lessons because I'm on a break. Because with my IEP, with my IEP, some of the things are I get breaks when I need them. I get longer like assignments, like more time for assignments. And so being judged for having those longer assignment times, or for getting those extra breaks and missing those plans, make people think that I'm not as smart because I'm missing those plans, or being called out in class for having a learning difference, or having to explain why I need those accommodations, and or getting like embarrassed, like you said, like you and Sam both said, getting embarrassed for having to talk with the teacher about it in front of everybody. And so those are just some of the things I've experienced.
Thanks for sharing, Abby. Yeah, that kind of gets at the heart of my issue too. I had several accommodations with my IEP, and one thing I was worried about is, people are going to overhear and think, well, that's not fair. He's got this accommodation, like you mentioned, one of them that some people get is extended time on assignments, and I think to a lot of other students on the surface that would seem rather unfair. And obviously, it's not unfair because people with those learning differences and challenges need that extra time to be able to complete that assignment. So yeah, that is definitely a big issue. Avery?
One issue that I've always had throughout my education career is my physical education classes are meant to be adaptive, and because of my disability, I couldn't even do some of the exercises that I was given. For example, I was given jumping jacks and push-ups, and obviously I can't do that. So it was very hard to perform at my best when I wasn't given proper exercises.
Thank you for sharing, Avery. Yeah, I think that getting that physical side too is really important. Not everybody has a mental or physical disability, and all the disabilities we go through are unique. So I'm glad you're on the panel. Madeline?
So since I have ADHD, dyslexia, and probably some dyscalculia, school can be hard. When I went to school at first, I was like very social, and I became more and more reserved because, like, not that I didn't want to well, I basically was afraid to speak out in case I was gonna be judged, and like I would sometimes get laughed at. And also with dyslexia, I'd like to show what it kind of give you an idea of what it kind of looks like on a page when I am reading. So I'm gonna screen share something. Oh, and it says the host disabled participant screen sharing. So, I mean, it's okay if I can explain it if we can't screen share.
Andre, are you able to enable her screen?
Sandra, if you're able to enable Madeline to be a screen share. And we may have to do that a little bit down the road. So go ahead, Madeline.
Okay, so when I'm reading, sometimes seeing the words can almost look similar to an optical illusion, where for my type of dyslexia, the words don't exactly move, but it's sort of like when you look at the sun and then you look at a wall, there's like, you can see that spot from the sun, but the words almost leave those spots, traces of those spots. When I'm looking at the page, it seems sort of strange and like that, but faintly, and it makes reading a challenge. And also it's sort of like if you like look at a tree that has a bunch of leaves and you try to count the leaves, it might be hard to count them in rows because they might confuse your eye, but it's sort of like that with words on a page for me, so I skip around and like lose track of where I'm reading sometimes.
Thank you for that explanation, Madeline. yeah, hopefully we can get that graphic to work, because I think it actually really is an eye-opening and interesting graphic. So it really gives people an insight into a disability that would be much harder to convey otherwise. So thank you. And I guess our next question is, what or who has been most helpful for you in becoming an empowered young person? And I know for me, going not necessarily a who, but a what. It's a what for me. My maturity level, I noticed after junior year, I moved down here in around like October, so the fall of like 2018, from a different state, and I noticed after that my maturity level greatly improved, and I became a better advocate for myself in terms of knowing how I learned and how I was able to function best in a high school setting. So that being able to greatly mature through certain life events really helped me to become more empowered and more aware of what I personally needed. Avery?
I would say the support system of my family and friends, and the support I received from my occupational and physical therapist, because they have always helped me increase my independence, because that's always been one of my goals, to be as independent as possible, and they have helped me achieve that throughout my life. So that's a big part of becoming the empowered person that I am.
Yeah, for sure. I know my family was also a big part in my journey in helping me become more empowered. My mom was a great advocate for me all throughout high school. So thank you, Mom. So yeah, parents are a big support network. Family is a big support network. So thank you for sharing that, Avery. Madeline, I know, are you able to share your picture now?
Yeah. Okay, cool. So this is just like, it doesn't look exactly like this, of course it is, but you get the idea from how it sort of is bright, and well, I mean, maybe it is just to me, but it seems to like kind of pop and kind of move, and I mean, like, but only move because of the light, not because it's literally moving, like that kind of thing. Some people with dyslexia have it. I have had words move a little bit, but yeah, basically that.
Thank you for sharing that. Do you think you could answer the next question as well? So what has helped you become a more empowered young person?
Oh, my parents have really helped me because they help tutor me at home and really help me with homework and try to be understanding, which is really nice to have that support and help.
For sure. Thank you, Madeline. Sam?
Two things, but I'm gonna make it short. Other than besides my parents helping me throughout school, I just think even though I still didn't really didn't really understand anything throughout elementary through middle school, my teachers still helped me a lot, and they tried their very best, even though sometimes I may not be cooperative or maybe irresponsive. But also, similar to what you're saying, it's like a what answer. Ever since my IEP dropped, I thought like I'm out of the comfort zone and I'm into the real world. I mean, not the real world, but like the real, like here's the real deal. So now I have to like kind of, it's like being put to the real test. And like the IEP is like just, it's for practice. And you can mess up as many times as you want and retry it. before you move on to like a higher level. So
Yeah, for sure. That's something that I've kind of noticed too. A lot of like when you get into the real world and away from school, um, there is a lot of there's a lot of things that are open to you now, especially when you leave high school. You know, I know someone kind of compared it going from like a linear game to like a vast open world thing. So I feel the same way, Sam.
it's a lot more freedom when you're in high school and when you're in college, but again, you have a lot more responsibilities, and this is all on you.
Yeah, for sure. I notice that freedom can sometimes be very intense too. It's a lot to take in all at once you leave high school. So I think one thing that people often forget is that kids with disabilities often become adults with disabilities. And I think that a lot of times once a student or kid leaves the system, people aren't really as invested as they are into those kids. So I think that's the other thing I wanted to mention today was that I know this is supposed to be about students with disabilities, but I want to just make sure that we remember that there are adults with these disabilities too, and these kids grow up to be adults, right? So I think that's important that we recognize that. So thank you, Sam. Abby?
For who has helped me becoming a powerful young person, it would definitely be my mom, boyfriend, and best friend for helping me fight for those accommodations in the IEP, and definitely just like getting me to the point where I'm comfortable speaking about my difference and not being so like held back in explaining why I need those accommodations. And for what has helped me, definitely workbooks for like the subjects I'm having a hard time in. Because if I get like, or like my dad, because he's a really good math person. So just like basically just having it like some people I can like lay back on if I need support.
Thank you. One thing I wanted to mention as well is I know we talked about going into the real world after school, and I think one of the big things today is a lot of us want to be supported, but at the same time, people like that freedom and having those responsibilities, and being able to have that is really important. People want to be able to do the other things that other people without learning differences partake in. So thank you, Abby, for that. And the next question is, what might you need or want from adults in or around your school? And I think for me, one thing I like from adults is, listen, try and be understanding. I know I talked about the only time I would really probably bring up me personally and a disability with an adult is, when I'm talking to them about accommodations or a difficulty I'm having as it pertains to my disability. So just kind of those things as it relates to, I talked about creating that safe space. So yeah, Sam. I'm sorry, did I forget somebody on the last question at all? I don't think I did I? Okay, sorry, I got a DM. Sam,
I was just making sure. Anyway, okay, what is something that you're asking? Was something I want or need from an adult, like at school? Definitely support, continued support, just in case if I don't know how to explain it. Just continued support after being released in my IEP and transferring into my my 504. So, and you know, the thing is, teachers in general, sometimes they don't realize what you're going through if you have a disability, and then and you're you know, show the teacher of what you're like hiding, because they can assume, oh, you're just not trying, you're not good at it, but they don't know that you have a disability. And that's kind of the sad thing about not having enough support and a lot more acceptance from the teachers.
Thank you, Sam. Madeline.
From teachers, I would like more honest support, because sometimes when I'm doing something that I know is challenging for me, and I can tell that it's something I really struggle with, they're like, wow, that was so great. And it kind of makes me feel worse in a way, because I can tell they're just pretending to make me feel better, and it makes me feel kind of like they think that I'm not as intelligent as I am, like I don't understand that I have a hard time in that area. And I would love to get compliments, like anyone would love to get compliments if they're honest and we actually did do a good job, and just support like that. And also I think that since a lot of times I see kids being teased or bullied and the teachers don't really step in, and I think that if it's true bullying, not just like if it's not just that everyone is having like being lightly teased and it's fun for everyone, then the teacher should really step in, because that can be really serious if a kid is seriously bullied. So yeah.
Thank you, Madeline. Yeah, I know one thing we've talked about before is, positive encouragement is really good. I think everybody on this panel would support that, but at the same time, don't overdo it for little things. Make sure, like Madeline said, it's honest, and sometimes if it's not honest, it can be a little patronizing. And I know I mentioned earlier that kids can kind of see through that when it's not an honest compliment about something they did well at. So I know I still feel good when I get honest compliments. So Avery.
Yeah, definitely.
I have two. One being, my teachers expect me or the students in my class to be social with the general ed students, but then again, I feel like the school is divided between special ed and general ed. So how do you expect us to be social if you don't let us explore and go speak to people? And another thing is that I'm a very independent person, but I see kids around me that need more assistance. Therefore, I believe that there needs to be more people in classrooms to help children, because there's 11 kids and only three people to help. So, aides. I forgot the word, what they're called, but I don't think there's enough people to assist children that need it more than I do.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Avery. Abby.
I definitely agree with what Avery was saying and Madeline was saying about having, instead of separating us from the general ed population in our schools, having those aides in the general ed population to help the students with the learning differences, instead of separating us between classes. Like, this is your class because you need an aide, and this is your class because you don't need an aide, because that definitely will want us to desocialize and just close ourselves off from the world, and not have, like, you separating me, so now I don't know how to socialize in the right way. Or having those honest compliments, because I've got a lot of like fake compliments in my life about those jobs I've done and how they were so amazing, and I'm just like they weren't that good. And so I definitely having those honest opinions and compliments would definitely help and make me like make people feel safer and more open with themselves. So yeah.
And just if we're treated like everyone else, but with support.
Thank you guys for sharing. Yeah, I know I haven't really, I was usually in gen ed like 99.9% of the time. So I don't know how much this means, but I do notice, I don't have firsthand experience with it, but I do notice that people tend to, the students with learning differences do tend to kind of get separated from gen eds, like you guys were saying, and I think that's a bad thing. Those kids, they're aware of that. And I do know a lot of those kids, I've seen them in regular classes before, and they really do enjoy being in regular classes. So I do think that's something I really want to see more of in every school. Sorry, go ahead.
So I just think what's kind of hypocritical about special ed is that some teachers want to tell the special ed students you need like a bigger challenge. You need to get out of your comfort zone and take on the real world. But then they're still setting the standards low in their classes and their education, and it kind of just make it worse when they do something like that. So
I would like to add to that because one of my goals in my IEP is to be independent in the so-called real world, but I don't understand how if you shield special ed children and then once we graduate, you're like, okay, go ahead and go live your life. You don't give us exposure, so that seems hard.
Yeah, just like you guys are saying, it's kind of hypocritical, especially since you tell us we can do anything we put our minds to, but then not showing us how to achieve what we put our mind to because you're not letting us socialize or showing us how to stick to what we put our minds to. And even if we don't stick to what we put our minds to, just like showing us how to socialize and get to where we need to get to stick to what put our minds to what we believe in.
Yeah, thank you, Abby and Avery. Yeah, I do notice that, like I mentioned before, it does seem to be a very isolating environment. So I think being able to incorporate, more freedom and responsibility into those programs would really benefit those students. So thank you, everybody, for sharing. I think our final question is, how has COVID impacted you? I think getting back to that, I know for a lot of those special education students, they are, we've been in this pandemic for a year and a half now, and that's a lot of time. I know for me, it started when I was like 18. I'm 19 and a half now, so it's not a massive deal for me as far as my maturity and personal growth. But I know that for other students, like if you're 14 and you're 15 and a half now, that's a massive difference, not just for regular students too, but it's even worse for students with disabilities or learning differences. And I think that that lack of interaction as well as opportunities to be able to kind of familiarize yourself with how the real world works before you're cut loose, so to speak. That's really hurt a lot of people as far as COVID goes. I know for me personally, I miss a lot of human interaction. Luckily, we're getting back to normal. I'll be back in person for the fall, so hopefully get the opportunity to meet more people and all that. So, Madeline, any thoughts?
I know COVID is a terrible thing, but and I do miss my friends and everything, but for school, I actually have enjoyed online learning more because I personally need more breaks and to feel more free at home rather than in a classroom.
Thank you, Madeline. Sam?
Nice ringtone. Some, I mean, really nothing has kind of impacted me academically except socialization, because you're isolated, you have nowhere to go. But the real thing that really messes things up now is that now that that we're getting back to normal, it's gonna kind of get hard. It's gonna get so really difficult to for most people to get used to the normal thing, because we've been through this a year and a half. And
Thank you, Sam. Yeah, I know for me, I was thinking about that the other days. Now everybody's got to readjust to going back in person, right? So we've been online for a little while, and that readjustment will probably be a little easier than going fully online, but it'll still be one. So especially if you've got students, who I've got autism, so I know that change is sometimes a little hard for me. Being able to accommodate them as they transition back, I think is really important.
My sister, I have a younger sister, and sometimes when things happen like this, major changes, she doesn't enjoy it, because she doesn't have she's not diagnosed with anything, but like it's just one of the things that people with ASD have, and sometimes I have a hard time changing the stuff when when events occur like this.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. Avery?
I would say that the classroom environment is more structured, and it's hard for the teacher or teachers to get control of every student because everyone has their own lives. And for example, for me, I can't tell my family, well, I can only tell my family to be quiet so much. So I feel like it's more structured in person than it is online, but we're doing the best we can. And it's very difficult. I remember the first few months of learning how to do this, I had multiple headaches, but we seem to be doing a lot better and learning on how to do this.
Thank you for sharing, Avery. Abby?
Since I'm a more hands-on learner, COVID has definitely affected me a lot more than most people in learning wise, because I can't learn like a lot of people can, where I can just look at a screen or look at a book and take down notes and learn it that way. I had to do like projects and more hands-on activities. And since COVID has started and we haven't been in person school that much, it's been a lot harder to learn for me, especially with like math or science, like those hands-on subjects where you can do more projects like that. And so definitely going back to school is a good thing. But just having those like accommodations, like you said, going back into school, um, will definitely help. And I am one of those people that with like major change, it takes up some time for me to readjust with major change. So it's definitely gonna be harder, but I know that every one of us can do it as long as we set our minds to it and have those accommodations ready for us.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you, Abby. One thing I wanted to hit before we get into the Q&A was, I know Sam brought up his sister isn't diagnosed with anything, but sometimes she does struggle with certain things. And that was one more thing I wanted to bring up, is that somebody might not have a disability, or they might have a disability, but they are going undiagnosed. Especially, I know as Jessica had brought up, students of certain like socioeconomic or racial backgrounds tend to go more undiagnosed relative to peers of different socioeconomic and racial status or factors. And so one thing is that please make sure you watch out for that. And if you see anything like that, don't be afraid to use resources, talk to them personally, bring parents in. You know, I think a lot of teachers conclude that, you know, if a student is kind of not doing very well, you know, they're just not trying or they're not applying themselves. And I think there might be something deeper going on there. So
Another thing, I didn't mean to cut you off, I'm so sorry.
don't worry about it.
Another thing I would like to add is that my family, as hard as they tried, they're not trained teachers. So bless their hearts, they felt like they were letting me down because they had no idea what they were doing. There was a lot of tears in the school year because my poor grandma and aunt were like, I don't know how to properly help you because I don't know what they're teaching you. So it was just hard to learn what I needed to learn, but when there's no help with the teacher that you know, it's impossible. But we did it.
So Ian,
Yeah.
Ian, if you don't mind, I just one question maybe for, it could be you or any of the panelists, but maybe any kinds of emotional challenges or struggles that you've seen your friends within special education go through, where you really felt for them, you felt empathy for them as they were going through some of that. I don't know if anybody can talk to that.
Yeah, if anybody wants to take a stab at that, you're more than welcome to.
One of my closest friends, she has severe autism, and so she doesn't like when there's either big change. She doesn't like change at all in general, but mainly big change. And so it's harder for kids with severe autism or any kid with a learning difference or difference in general to get back in the movement or like just back into normal life before COVID has hit. And so definitely going back into school in the fall is going to be hard for a lot of kids, especially my friend and us and me, just because the big difference, and we have adapted to COVID-19 in the learning, but then having to readapt, like we have said, to going back in school full time or part time will be very hard, especially with we having to re-socialize. And like me, I'm going to a new school this next year, so like we having to re-socialize and make new friends and get new accommodations. And she's gonna go to that school with me, so we both have to get new accommodations or new IEPs, and so it would be very hard for us both because we don't know if this new school is going to be open to us and like a safe space or going to have a lot of bullies. So
I would say for me, one specific friend comes to mind. She has a very hard time learning at all, period, but she has made so much progress throughout the time that I've known her, throughout my school years of being in person. And she has told me that all the progress that she has made feels like it went out the window because of not being in school and learning how to navigate learning through technology.
Thank you for sharing, Abby and Avery. Any other questions? Any from the teachers, educators?
I think that's it for now. I know we're coming real close to a time that we are going to end. And I definitely want to thank you all. You did such a great job articulating some of your experiences and recommendations. And I think, you know, this will be a video that will be viewed again and again and again, hopefully raising people's consciousness and their understanding, and hopefully even their empathy and compassion towards other students who might be in a similar experience as you've experienced. So we really appreciate everything you've done. And Jessica, I want to really thank you because this could have never happened without you. I think you went so above and beyond in your outreach to these students and to help this happen. So thank you.
Yeah, if I can just amplify a few things that I heard the panelists say today, because it was pretty astounding, some things that I've heard. One of the things that I definitely heard was a large request of the teachers to learn more about the different disabilities so that they can expect more of the students, but also at the same time support them adequately, but support them in a way where they can be independent. And that I heard a few different ways, a few different times throughout the hour. Supporting, our students with all the different learning differences, but in all the unique ways that they need support, but allowing them to be independent learners in the school is a big request. Another thing that I heard was that it's very uncomfortable to hear about your own personal needs being discussed publicly. That surfaced a couple different times today. It's sort of like feeling judged and oftentimes not being well understood by others who are listening in but don't understand what's going on. And in some ways, it's almost like a request to have a culture in the classroom that has a strong understanding about how everybody has unique learning differences. We all have learning differences and we all have our own unique needs. And when the culture in the classroom supports that, then we can actually gain high expectations for every learner in the school. Another interesting thing that surfaced today, that didn't surface last week, was this notion that it's a problem. It's a true big problem when we isolate special education services in different campuses or in different parts of the campus, and students don't get to interact with general education and sometimes feel like they're being very like segregated, and it doesn't allow you to feel like you're being integrated in the real world, as we keep saying to our students. So those are some really, really big, I think, concepts that surfaced today. And I just wanted to amplify those ideas for our educators to hear. And I thank you so much for your courage to tell your stories. This has been a really wonderful journey for Anthony and I to be here with you and listen to your stories and allow you to tell your experiences in our schools. And we appreciate that. I think a lot of educators will benefit from that.
If I have a quick time to add something,
Yeah, sure.
I would just like to say I have the utmost respect for, first of all, my fellow panelists and the people that took time to listen, because there needs to be light shined on us. So I'm very proud of us for taking time for people to learn about what we need and how we need to improve our education system.
Absolutely. And I know we're ending our recording now, so I know Sandra will be pushing the button, but I do want to call to mind, if you look in the chat, you're going to see a number of the participants that were watching you are making some comments here. I think it's important that, for that you all read through those, because that's from the people that just spent an hour listening to you and learning from you.